When inheriting a tax shelter account like a 401k, an IRA, something like that, it's now under the 10-year rule, okay? The 10-year rule. And in some instances, that's very clear and very straightforward. But in other instances, it can create a lot of confusion. Got a great question from a fan of the show about how it works with a spouse and for kids. Got that and more coming up. The U.S. tax code is made up of rules and then exceptions to those rules and then exceptions to those exceptions, and sort of around and round we go. It's the most complicated tax system on the entire planet, and that certainly isn't something to brag about. And those tax laws are what govern, well, how are tax sheltered accounts, things like IRAs, Roth IRAs, 401ks, those sort of things, how are those treated when someone passes away, when the original account owner passes away? Got a great question here, basically suggested topic from fan of the show, Greg. But before I get into it, hang with me, because I just need to explain a little bit of the rules and then the exceptions to the rules before we get in and answer the question or address the topic. And so the rules changed, well, both in 06, I believe it's 06, although don't fact check me on that. I didn't go back and confirm it, but my recollection is 06. But then really changed in 2020. Leading up to 2020, had nothing to do with COVID. The Secure Act 1.0 was passed late in 2019, took effect in 2020, and it greatly changed how the rules work when you inherit a tax shelter account from someone else. If someone passed away, so prior to 1/1 of 2020, the old rules applied, which meant that you were able to stretch out that IRA, that withdrawal. And Roth IRAs had a little bit, it applied here too, but there's some uniquenesses with Roth. You could decide not to stretch it and take it out in 5 years. I don't know why you do that, but anyway. But you were able to take out as much as you wanted, pay tax consequences or whatever if you needed the money, but you also had the choice for someone that passed away before 1/1 of 2020, where you could just take a required minimum distribution, a small amount out every single year for the rest of your life. Okay, and so you could stretch that account out, the life expectancy of that account, for a long period of time. That changed 1/1 of 2020, enter Secure Act 1.0, enter the 10-year rule. So old rule still grandfathered for anyone that passed away before 1/1 of 2020, but someone that passed away after 1/1 of 2020, now it's the 10-year rule. We're essentially, and again, I'm glossing over a lot of details, just bear with me, and where if you inherit an IRA from someone that doesn't apply to some exceptions, you've got to withdraw the entire account. You got to empty the account within 10 years. No longer are you able to just stretch it your entire life. You've got to empty the account within 10 years. And if the person you inherited the money from had already passed their required beginning date, so they were already subject to RMDs, you've got to take RMDs as well. That's in general the new rules, okay? However, spouses are different. And that's where I believe they made this change in 06. Don't quote me on that exactly, but spouses, even in the old rules, but now in the new rules, have an exception. Starting in 06, I believe that the spouses actually have the ability to say, I don't want to turn this into an inherited IRA. I want it to become my IRA. If your spouse passes away and you're the beneficiary of the account, you can say, yep, have my spouse's IRA become my IRA. And that means it's your IRA. You then don't have to take a required minimum distribution. Like related to that deceased individual, there's no 10-year rule that applies to you, that sort of thing. It can just be merged into your own IRA. Applied in the old rules, applies in the new rule as well. That's the spouse is considered an eligible designated beneficiary. Did a video on this just recently. It's those 3 different beneficiary categories. A spouse is an eligible designated beneficiary under the new rules. What does eligible mean? Eligible to have an exception to the 10-year rule. Oh my goodness, so complicated, right? In some ways, very straightforward. In other ways, super complicated. Let's get into Greg's question here, comment. Hi, Mike. Love your podcast and your videos. I appreciate that. I do have a topic I would like for you guys to do a video on. My question is, I have both my wife and my children as my primary beneficiaries on my IRA. And when I pass, can my wife still convert, and I would say transfer, convert is typically Roth conversion, right? But move her portion of my IRA into her own IRA? I know my children would have to open an inherited IRA, follow the 10-year rules, Thanks for your consideration. Oh, it's a fantastic scenario, fantastic question. And it, yeah, may apply to a lot of folks, even though it is more common when you're married and also have kids that your spouse is 100% the primary beneficiary. It's going to give them more flexibility. I'll share a few of the things, and then kids would be contingent. It may make sense in your situation or other situations to have both the primary be, your spouse maybe for 50%, and then the rest of it as primary going to the kids. That may make sense in your situation. So fantastic question. And the short answer is yes, that's exactly how it would work. And my understanding, and again, the tax laws are created with rules and then exceptions and exceptions to exceptions and so on. So I did some extra research just to confirm my instinct here. But yeah, just because your spouse would be a partial beneficiary to your IRA, including your kids, that doesn't negate their ability to be able to move your IRA into their own IRA and have all the flexibility that would come with that. So the short answer to your question and video suggestion is, let's say you've got, and we're just going to make the math super, super simple. You've got an IRA of $100,000. You've got a spouse and 2 kids. You list your spouse as 50% beneficiary, primary beneficiary for that account, that $100,000. And then each of the kids 25 and 25 as primary beneficiaries. Then when you pass away, yeah, your spouse would be able to take their 50%, 50 grand, and choose to move it into their own IRA. It becomes their own. There's no 10-year rule. They'd have all the flexibility. And then each of your kids would have to open up inherited IRAs, move their 25% or 25 grand into that inherited IRA. If you'd already started your RMDs, they'd have to take an RMD, and the account would need to be emptied within 10 years after death for the kids, but not the spouse. So yeah, that's essentially that can work, okay? That can work. One other sort of thing to mention with your spouse, or maybe a few other planning points, let me just say, with your spouse. Your spouse also, even though they're eligible designated beneficiary, so eligible to transfer the dollars into their own IRA, they still could choose to say, you know what, I want it to be an inherited IRA. Yeah, make it an inherited IRA instead of moving it into my IRA. And you'd say, why would you do that? If your spouse is not yet age 59 and a half by the time when you pass away, and they are going to need access to that money, you can draw money out of an inherited IRA and pay the tax on it, but no 10% early withdrawal penalty, right? From an inherited IRA. If the spouse transfers it into their own IRA and then says, I'm not at age 59 and a half, but I need some of this money. Now it's their own IRA, right? And they'd have to pay tax and an early withdrawal penalty if they pull dollars out before 59 and a half. So they may, in that circumstance, say, I want to move that into an inherited IRA, even though I'm a spouse and I've got a greater choice. Because get this, they could then at a later time, then there's no real requirement. At a later time, they could say, you know what, I moved this to an inherited IRA. I want to move it now to my own IRA. You can choose to do it later. Like you'd almost think there's no way, right? That's too complicated and that's way too much freedom. No, it's allowed. That is allowed. So some flexibility there. So that's one planning point. Another planning point, keep in mind that any dollars, even from an IRA and that have named beneficiaries, so won't go through probate, would be counted in your federal estate if they go to your kids. If they go to your spouse, there's an unlimited marital deduction, okay? So many people, because of the federal estate tax exemptions right now, they're not worrying about this, but I want to point it out that if you list, okay, I want my spouse to be some of my primary beneficiary, but kids to be part primary beneficiaries as well, the part that goes to your kids is going to be included in your federal estate. The part that goes to your spouse wouldn't. And then the last planning point, obviously there's a big emotions that are wrapped into making this decision. Should spouse be 100% primary beneficiary? Do we have the kids be primary as well? And I would just say lay that out in a comprehensive financial planning process and work through, does that make sense? And what are the ramifications and so on? Many people do have spouse is 100% primary, and that's primarily because if someone passed away, if the account owner passed away, the spouse would have all of those resources available for them, for their financial future and financial picture, and they would have flexibility to say, well, even if oh, that's more than I need, well, I'll start gifting some to the kids, that sort of thing. You might look and say, no, kids are in a lower tax bracket and we've got plenty. We've already done all of that planning work. So therefore leaving some of the IRA to the kids makes a ton of sense. But just, I'd want you to plan that out and make sure it makes a lot of sense, not just in a vacuum, but in looking at your entire financial picture. And that's what your CFP does, right? Your CFP is going to look at all 6 areas of your financial life, not each of them in a vacuum, but how they intersect together, right? So your retirement plan, your tax picture, your estate plan, all of that connects together in making this wise choice, as well as, right, understanding these unique new tax laws. So fantastic question and suggestion, Greg. Thank you. I hope that helps. Might spark some more questions. Leave some questions, some comments below as well. All right, work with your certified financial planner on that. If you don't have a CFP on your team, you can contact one on my team. Find us online, Korhorn.com. That's Korhorn with K, wisemoneyshow.com. You can find us there as well, or give us a call, 574-247-5898. All right, there you have it. Go out and take your next wise step in your financial life.